to another episode of the Hot Topic Podcast with your host, Patrick Quanch.
Well, I'm Patrick with the Hot Topic Podcast, and I have some special guests today from the One Nexus Group, and we thought we'd dive in and talk about a couple of subjects that are relevant to our industry. And Casilyn, I'd like to start with you. When it comes to dealership prospecting, what do you feel like is probably one of the main drivers or maybe one of the main hurdles of prospecting when it comes to new or even seasoned employees?
Yeah. I mean, that's a loaded question right off the bat. Dang. Well, I'll come at it with, a commercial and fleet background because that's just what we do. One of the main drivers is obviously, how do I grow my book of business? How do I become like the guy that's about to retire? Because God knows he's holding on or she's holding on to that book of business. So I want to prospect and build my own book of business, or at least ready myself to take somebody else's over. But one of the hurdles is just not knowing where to start. We help so many people, men, women, new, seasoned, kind of reinvent themselves in the industry or reinvigorate their business just by thinking outside the box. And it's pretty simple. But that's really what drives people is more money, more names in the book of business, but also the hurdle that we come across is just, where do I start?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think as a commercial account manager, I think what we have to really identify is what are their natural traits, meaning are they naturally aligned to be able to go out and do some cold calling and prospecting? And I'm going to tell you that that's not easy to do. Now, there's several methods that you need to look at when it comes to customer acquisition. You can network, you can obviously work with your vendors, but prospecting has been proven to be a very viable method into your customer acquisition. But why do very few people learn how to do it? What's the fear? Will, what's your thoughts on that?
I think there are two words that are screaming at me when you bring this up. And one we talk about a lot. I guess we talk about them both, but in different contexts. One is connection. And you mentioned networking. And I think networking gets a little bit of a bad rap in the automotive industry as a whole. But I see networking, when done the right way and with the right people, as a way to be much more efficient in the prospecting efforts. And being able to loop in multiple things that you're doing with multiple people in one given effort. And I had a recent boot camp that I did where I asked the guy one of our great questions of how long would it take you when you go out and cold call to meet 5 decision makers? Hard pause, just wait. And he said, right now at my pace, that would take me probably 2 to 3 weeks. So then I asked him, how many decision makers could you meet if you went to a BNI meeting, a home builders association? He goes, probably about 20 minutes. And then I just sat and waited because it was like, you got to figure this part out about the efficiency standpoint of it. So among other things, connection is huge, not just with the networking bringing into prospecting, but some of the other ways that you're connected that I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. But the other thing, I think the challenge that a lot of dealerships have is they don't give the representative enough time to prepare. There's no real opportunity to have quality homework to be able to actually go figure out how you want to go about that potential connection, that potential customer. It's not quite spray and pray, but it's a go out and knock on doors and see what happens instead of building towards something and being specific with where you want to go. And I wish that dealers would give their salespeople that are in outside sales more opportunity to do that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I would probably even interject again, being on that side of the desk, that most leaders managers, directors, whatever it is, they don't know how to do it. So they don't know how to tell you how to do it. So it's one of those things, you'll just go figure it out. Well, go figure what out? What am I trying to figure out? What's the plan? There is no plan. And that's the sad thing about our side of the industry, is it's just kind of a hire and hope. And we're going to hire this guy and hope it works out and he'll just figure it out. Well, sadly, in 2026, that's not the way things should operate. With as much information that we have, the technology, the automation, things that are in place, now AI can do a lot of uh, your footwork, if you will, if you use it correctly to be able to, reach some of these potential clients that you're looking for. And I think that's going to be kind of a big wave to what we do traditionally. Will, to your point, we've always gone out and either picked up the phone or made some phone calls or networked. But now with AI automation, I can see where a lot of groups now will start that cold calling with AI to be able to warm up a potential client and then interject a salesperson once that client has shown some interest in whatever, whether it's a product or a service that you're offering at that point. Ryan, what are your thoughts on something like that?
Yeah, well, I just want to say thanks again, Patrick, for inviting us to the podcast today. This subject is near and dear to my heart as a former commercial account manager myself. I was brought on years ago to one of the leading automotive groups in the country to emphasize and really, really prioritize prospecting, because the auto group found out that with the day-to-day, the hustle and flow, the way that sort of the natural work day and work weeks can draw your attention here, draw your attention there, taking care of fires over here, issues over there, or quotes over there. The prospecting wasn't being prioritized. It wasn't being emphasized, and it wasn't being from a sort of accountability or a KPI standpoint. It wasn't really too high on the pecking order, right? So first and foremost, in the dealer world, I heard two trains of thoughts, and this was from folks that have been doing it for months or years, or people that do it for decades, and looking at when that retirement is on the calendar. And that's, hey, I don't have enough prospects, and sort of the excuse making, or I have too many. This is information overload. I got, I'm sort of kind of paralyzed right now because I'm trying to analyze all of this information, right? I'm going to make a bold statement to get us kicked off here, and that's, before we even make any traditional, what we think of prospecting activity, there are so many prospects within our dealer walls. We have our parts department, folks that are buying parts from us that don't buy vehicles from us, right? We have our service center where we're maintaining and repairing these vehicles. And if we pull up that VIN, it probably wasn't purchased from our dealership, right? So that's another avenue for us. We also have our books of business, and we talk about this on our One Nexus weekly trainings on how can we take our existing customer base and talk to them on, educate them on cycling plan, life cycle management, fuel management, maintenance management, et cetera. And we could turn those fleets that are 15, 20, 30, 50 units, but be able to get more volume, more sales, more activity out of our existing books of business, right? And while it's a win for us, it's also a win for our client. They're not experiencing the downtime, They're not experiencing the poor image in the market with these vehicles on wheels as their billboards. They're not experiencing their employees wanting to renegotiate their pay every day and every week because they're like, this is what my boss is going to give me to work in, really? Right? So in case you can't tell, I'm passionate about it and fired up about it. I'll yield the floor now, but I'm chomping at the bit to contribute on today's session.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, along those lines, let me kind of put things in context. So just recently, I had a conversation with a commercial account manager at a large Ford store. And he's been in the business for about 4 years. And through AI, he developed a customer list for his outbound prospecting. And he had this great presentation that he had, a nice little process. He had some software built into it, spreadsheets and things of that nature to be able to quantify what he's doing. And I asked him, I was like, how much time in a day are you going to spend prospecting? He said, generally anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. I was like, man, that's style. And this guy, this young man's probably selling on average about 20 units a month. And I said, well, how many hours in a day do you work? He goes, 10 hours a day at the office. I was like, oh, that's even better. That's awesome. So of 30% of your time has been spent on prospecting, it leaves 70% of your time to handle everything else. How do you handle that? And he just looked at me like I had a third eye. And I was like, 30% of your time spent on prospecting is a lot of time for someone that sells 20 units a month. And you guys are going to get a kick out of this. As I'm talking to him, he's driving down the road, delivering a truck. And he said, I have to deliver 4 trucks by noon today. I said, you're doing that personally? Yeah. We don't have any drivers. I have to do it myself. Okay. So you're going to eat up 4 hours of your day driving, delivering trucks, which, don't get me wrong, is important. It doesn't leave much time for prospecting. Well, I'll do it tomorrow. So now we're getting to it. There's not enough time in the day with all your other activities and all the other things that are pulling on your time. So my question to new commercial account managers is, how much time do you spend on prospecting? How much time do you spend on customer retention? How much time do you spend in meetings? How much time do you end up spending over there talking to a colleague about absolutely nothing? And here's the worst part. How much time do you scroll on your phone? You're trying to get to 500 units a year. There is no time for scrolling on your phone, because as soon as you sell something, it begins the firestorm of what it takes to be able to deliver that vehicle. And in our world, it's not as simple as driving a vehicle, putting it make ready, cleaning it up, and delivering it. It's the upfit. It's the vehicle wrap that may be going on that vehicle. It's the contracting. It's the transportation of the vehicle, logistics, everything that goes into that. You have to have your hands on that vehicle the whole time. So, Will, I'm going to throw this question to you. For a commercial account manager, let's say, is selling on average 10 units a month, and they're trying to get to 20. What would you tell them as far as time allocation of what they need to spend on prospecting? How much time would you think they need to spend on a given day? Hey, it's Patrick with Vantage Alignment Recruiting, and I want to tell you how we help dealerships remove the gut feelings and guesswork from the hiring process. We use the Axis Alignment Index to quantify a candidate's natural traits and identify where they're most likely to succeed inside your dealership. Because hiring a good person isn't enough, you got to put the right person in the right seat. Vantage Alignment Recruiting. Clarity in hiring, alignment for performance.
I'm actually going to turn around the answer a little bit, Patrick, in that what I would recommend that they do is, I don't know if it would be journal or whatever, but it would be write out as much detail of your typical day as possible and the time that it takes. Or, I mean, the ideal world would be you have somebody shadowing you almost and taking notes of where your time went, right? And kind of watching that, because then you can identify the scrolling on the phone or the delivering, a lot of the things that you said of, hey, my prospecting time that should try to get me from 10 to 20 or whatever number you're at plateau and trying to move to, where is that time that should be dedicated to that going? And I think there might be a little bit of a mindset issue when it comes to prospects and customer retention of the opportunity is always going to be there, right? They're always going to be turning around vehicles and things of that nature. So it doesn't hurt me, relatively speaking, if that call is tomorrow instead of today, right? As opposed to trying to dictate as much as possible within your day already. So when we go through organization and planning, we actually have our students brainstorm all of the different things that can go into your day. And I'm going to pick on Casilyn and ask her to go next because she knows what's coming. We did one in Detroit a couple of months ago, and I wrote out my list of things that get in the way, for better or worse. Just take your time, right? And one of the ones that I wrote was ideas that Casilyn has that we need to talk about. And right underneath it was ideas that I have that I need to talk to Casilyn about. And we had a good laugh about it and everybody else in the room. But when you actually acknowledge the things that take time, for better or worse, and how much they take, then you can see what's left. And when we started putting this activity together, I found some stats that just sales wide, no matter what you're doing, that somewhere between 25 and 27% of your day is dedicated to sales, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So 3/4 of your day is some type of admin or wasted time scrolling on the phone or water cooler chats, or I call them, can you just, somebody just comes over and says, can you just do this, or spouse or whatever too. So until we actually identify that, write that out, and let almost, feel the pain of it, we don't really know. But once you do that, then you go, okay, I need to reprioritize. And that at least is the start to getting to where you need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me just piggyback and kind of free flow from what Will just said. That got a really big laugh, because
It did.
Almost every week we spend at least an hour, if not more, talking about ideas, and that's being very conservative.
Well, now we have more because Ryan's joined the party too. So
yeah, exactly. But I think that it's important to have those dialogues of how we can help salespeople in the chairs that many of these viewers that are actually watching this are going to be in, whether that's at a dealership or an OEM or even an upfitter's perspective. I would be willing to bet that the managers that are listening to this, the directors or GMs or dealer principals that are listening to this, can already identify wasted time at a dealership, but they have no actual context for it. What I mean by that is they're hungry for an ROI. They're hungry for a higher profit. What really needs to happen is actually slow down in order to speed up. But during that slowdown period, we're doing a time study. We're going to do that, what Will just walked us through, and identify how much of our day, the salespeople's day, is actually dedicated to actually selling the vehicle. And in the commercial and fleet space, we all know it can take months to close a vehicle sale. We know that. But what all goes into that tells a bigger story. How much face time or how much elbow time do we have with our prospects before we actually close the deal? So how are we accounting for that in this time study? Now, bringing it back to prospecting and marketing, I always look at it from a leadership perspective. Is, do the leaders of the dealership or even the upfitter, do they even know what their prospecting strategies are of the store that they're working in? Mm-hmm. When I worked at an auto group, and where I got my start was in internet sales in the retail side. And, as one does, the market crashed in 2008. Then you find another job and we get some more experience. But I found myself leading business development centers in the service and parts and retail sales. And then found myself eventually going into commercial and fleet. And then body shop was in there too. But I found myself on almost all sides of the dealership in the leadership position, hearing my co-leaders tell me of all of the customer issues that they have. And here I am in a BDC, standpoint, thinking all of these are opportunities. So to bring it back to what Ryan was saying, look in your own front and backyard. Look at who you're leading a department with, your cohorts, if you will. There are so many untapped prospects within reach that we don't even have to really spend all that much marketing dollars or time to even invest in prospecting. But I think that it starts with, what am I spending my time on? What am I spending my resources? Because it's not just money. It's your time, it's your energy, it's the capacity of the salesperson. What are they actually spending time doing? And as a leader, how am I going to take responsibility and accountability for how I lead my team to success and to be better, be best in the industry? That looks like skills training. And not to have a selfish plug here, but at One Nexus, that's what we do. We do skills training, whether that's foundational, whether that's for fleet management or fleet cycling, whether that's for managers or directors, on how do I actually operate this department we call commercial and fleet when I only really have one or two people and they're doing everything from admin to prospecting and marketing to deliveries, like you had said. One last thing, and then I'll yield the floor. When, Patrick, you said they're delivering vehicles. I'm like, yeah, because they're still living in the COVID era. Because once COVID hit, love them, but who was delivering these vehicles? Who was it? Well, it was the older generation who had a lot of time on their hands and wanted to be useful and wanted to be helpful, but they physically couldn't be in the store or around people because COVID. So who then took responsibility of delivering those vehicles? The people working the sales floor, because what else did they have to do? Nobody was buying anything. Everyone was really scared. And if they did need to buy something, they were paying premium. And that just shrunk your buyer pool. Now we have moved so far beyond that problem that we have created more problems with not expanding our team as necessary. And I'm speaking very, in a blanket wide view here. But working with dealerships all across the nation, that's what I'm seeing consistently, is that post-COVID, the leaders have not adequately grown their department to then free up their salespeople to properly prospect, properly market, and they haven't released the chains of the corporate viewpoint on what prospecting and marketing should be. So I'm very passionate about that side. I'll yield back.
Can I add something to that quickly, just since we're on that point, because I wanted to bring that up. To me, based on the experience that I've had under Ken Taylor with One Nexus, dealerships of every kind of brand, you don't have a commercial department unless you have a manager, some form of admin, and 2 salespeople. If you have anything less than that and those roles, you just have people that are trying to survive. And they might be superstars, but you don't have a department. You just have people that are trying to make it work. And Ken used to have this term that he would call anything underneath that, you're just playing it commercial. And I would add praying to see that it would make sense. So to Casilyn's point, how nice would it be if you could primarily focus on your actual job, right? And let others handle the paperwork. And I have seen plenty of evidence in the dealers that we've consulted with, once the admin, even more so than the manager, once the admin comes into play, typically the salespeople wind up doubling or tripling what they're able to do. Mm-hmm. It might take a year, and a lot of dealers aren't willing to invest in that. But you got to look long-term in fleet and commercial. You really do.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to share a couple of recent examples, Patrick, with those on the call today and those tuning in, of some examples of scenarios where dealer partners of ours have come to us with these challenges, right? Let's face it, prospecting, I would argue it's one of the challenges of just getting to it, right? Prioritizing it, getting around to it. Well, I have this, and this to take care of. And one of the examples, we were working with a dealer partner, and Will and Casilyn are spot on. They said, "Hey, how am I supposed to take care of what sits on my desk every morning? I get sucked into the office. I get sucked into the dealership. Other than leaving for lunch, I don't have time to leave until I, go home at 6 o'clock at night, right?" And so they're spot on, and the department's got to be structured for delegation and teamwork. We call it collaboration, right? Being able to say, "Hey, I'm in the field right now. Let me send you this information I need to respond to the client, get it taken care of." Whether that's someone in the F&I department, a commercial manager that's at the office that day, or an admin style personnel team member, right? That's got to be a critical component in order to even be able to consider a lot of the things we're talking about. And then on the flip side of that too is just where it falls on the calendar. If you don't put prospecting on your calendar, it's very, very, very likely to not happen. So if you don't plan to do it, it's the likelihood for it to even happening in the first place is close to zero. Now, I had a dealer partner push back on that with me recently and said, "Well, hey, I'm going to put it on the calendar, but as my day unfolds and evolves, it gets pushed back to another time, to another time, to another time." We came up with this solution. I want to share it with those on the line today because it seems to be working. It says, "I'm going to do this. I know that the second I step foot on the dealership in the morning, I'm going to be drawn in for most of the day. I'm going to start my day with some prospecting, and I'm going to see what I can get done until I arrive at the dealership. And it was incremental steps, incremental adjustments to that cadence. And believe it or not, it went from, well, I was able to do 30, 45 minutes, right, one day. And it grew and evolved to, you know what, especially if you have a team there at the office that you could still feel like you're connected to the workflow throughout the day, that they were able to come in break before lunchtime and do their prospecting in the morning. And to be able to hit 6, 8, 10 prospects, or to be able to get a couple of meetings under their belt before it was lunchtime and still yield productive prospecting activity. So I just wanted to emphasize that if it's on the calendar, that means you prioritize it. And if you schedule it, it's likely to occur, right? But you could start with small and incremental adjustments to your usual routine and see how it works for you. So I just wanted to share a couple of tips there that seem to land well for some other folks we work with.
Yeah. I think planning is obviously important. But Ryan, obviously you have a commercial background as I do. I can't tell you how many times I would spend 30 minutes to an hour the evening before to get ready for the next day. I have a checklist of things based on priority. This has to be done all the way down. And you get to the dealership and there's a firestorm. And I tell people, I was very fortunate in my career. I was selling somewhere between 600 and 700 units a year. Now that's a lot. And I tell people I was doing that with a flawed system and they just look at me like I'm crazy, but let me explain. And I would tell these young salespeople that were trying to get it and they were trying to understand it. I said, guys, look, there are just sometimes on some days you don't have time to sell. You just can't. You're either taking care of fires, you're making sure that you're retaining customers, or there's some sort of requirements that the dealers are putting on you on that particular day. Everything just works into a firestorm. And as a salesperson, it's very hard to get past that. It's like, but I have X, Y, and Z that I promised they would have today, this morning by 9 o'clock. And here it is 11:30 and I hadn't even touched it. So from that aspect, it was very difficult because then you go into a mode of you're constantly apologizing. Mm-hmm. Hey, look, I'm sorry, I can't get this quote to you. And your customers are sitting there waiting. Now, overwhelmingly, most of the time, customers just want to see the numbers, right? But in some cases, they may be up a time crunch. It's like, look, I have a meeting at 1 o'clock with the key decision maker to determine if we're going to buy this truck or not. I need the quote right now. And sometimes you can't do it. And it's very draining. It's very stressful for the account manager because they can't get done what they need to get done because so many people have, I used to call it dogpiling. They dogpile on top of you and it doesn't really matter what your schedule looks like that day. It's everybody else's schedule. So Casilyn, let me throw that to you. What do you suggest to commercial account managers that given that same scenario, it's like, hey, I'm walking into the dealership and I've got 20 things that I have to get done before lunch. And here it is 11:30, they hadn't even touched it. What do you say to someone like that?
Yeah. It's again, let's take a look at what you're spending your time doing. Let's start there. And then let's look at what your organization looks like. How are you actually assigning yourself the items that need to get accomplished? And do you have anyone to reach out to? You know, Will mentioned having an admin for the department, and that's really what makes or break a department, in my opinion, is having an admin. They're handling anything from sending over those quotes on behalf of the commercial account manager because of those situations. Sometimes it's sales meetings, sometimes it's an OE requirement, sometimes it's a general manager last minute, hey, I need to talk to you, or could you just? It's one of those problems that is not unique to the commercial and fleet space. It's across America in every single industry. Everyone runs into this problem. So one, there's really no need to feel alone in that stress or anxiety because everyone deals with that to a certain degree. How can we reach up or reach out is what I always say. In an entrepreneurial world, you want to surround yourself with like-minded individuals that have either gone ahead of you and paved the way or are locked arms with you, wanting to pave the way together. Same thing goes with running your book of business as a commercial and fleet salesperson. I have the background of a fleet management company. And so I went from, auto group or dealership space to a fleet management company. And we had a whole organization to keep, no pun intended, organized, and to keep on top of those proactive approaches. So that's one reason why I take a look at the leadership perspective when it comes to, hey, there's a lot of stress or there's a lot of disorganization when it comes to prospecting or marketing, or even when I'm spending my time. I look at the leaders. How are they leading? How are they paving the way? Because if you as a leader of the department, of the dealership, or even a regional sales manager, you're having an issue with many of your dealerships in your space or your upfitters, chances are, monkey see, monkey do. They're following in someone's footsteps, or they truly just don't know who to reach up to, meaning their leader. Maybe they don't know, or they're not running with anybody. Maybe it's a one-man show. There's a lot of different nuances here, but what I say is take a look at what you have as far as tools go. There's an incredible company, Work Truck Solutions, shout out, we're not being paid, but they just released a CRM that's specifically for commercial and fleet salespeople. We have something that's very similar to it, but there are now tools, is what I'm saying. There are now tools that are bona fide, experienced tools that will help a commercial account manager or an inside salesperson, admin, leader, insert your title, to get organized and to stay organized. But I think it really does come down to, how am I being proactive with my reaches to my customers? How am I reacting when necessary? But how can I best set myself up to be in that proactive position where I don't feel the anxiety and the stress of, something has come up, the building's on fire, I have to put out these fires, the sky is falling. No one likes to be in that position, and our customers can sense it when we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, Patrick, I'd like to go back to your question and give a spin or a take on it on my end, if I can. But in your example, you said, let's say this commercial account manager had 20 things on their to-do list for the day, right? I would challenge to look into, well, out of those 20, how many of them did we know about it last month? How many of them did we know about it last week? And then how many of them did we know about it earlier in the current week, et cetera? Out of the 20, 3 or 4, maybe 5 have probably materialized since maybe hypothetically they woke up in 6 in the morning, right? However, the other 15 or so on that list of 20, those were ones that we could have been working on in the background. Again, addressing it. They'll use I heard the word proactive there. So how much of our day are we reacting to what happens to us, or how much of our day are we in the driver's seat, for the most part, to a degree, controlling, hey, I'm taking care of this from 9 to 11 today. And I would structure the week as a commercial account manager. I structured my week with Monday mornings and Friday afternoons. Those were my admin. Those were my strategizing time. That was my calendar. I was updating my calendar. I was sending meeting invites, making sure I had my lead list and prospects ready for either wrapping up for the week or getting ready for next week, right? And I was in the field every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, unless I was on vacation or some life emergency that made me not need to work that day, right? Then I was in the field Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday consistently. And then my prospects who would turn to customers would know, hey, Ryan's typically in this area on Thursday morning. So they'd reach out to me almost knowing my schedule, right? They knew that I would be active and in the field working this part of my territory. This, I call it, gridding your territory, right? They start to pick up on your habits, and because you're not just reacting to the phone all day, it rings up. I got to go over here. Got an email. I got to go over there. No, you're able to take some control and coordination of how you respond to the day to day. I call it the pinging, dinging, and ringing. Right?
Yeah, for sure. I like your analogy, Ryan. But let me interject here. I think as much as we would like to be proactive, and I think all 4 of us believe that being proactive is what is the key to success. The issue that dealerships have is that nobody else within the dealership is proactive. They're reacting to things 100 miles an hour. And Ryan, to your point, I can go into my office and shut the door and say, you know what, for the next hour or set time frame, I have to do this. And within 2 minutes, somebody's knocking on my door because what they have is time sensitive. I need your answer right now. Okay. So you stop what you're doing and then you deal with whatever comes your way, right? Okay, great. Let's say it only takes a minute, but they needed that answer. Great. But how many times have you shut your door at the office to only look up to see 5 people standing outside your office needing your attention? And that's more about the question is, how do you get the whole group to be more scheduled and more proactive? And I think that's the tough haul, especially when you get into the bigger groups. We'd like to say that there's more staff and there's more tools available, which is true compared to a staff of 1 or 2. But again, it's getting everybody on that same page, starting at your departmentally, starting with your director. They are so reactive to everything that comes on their desk that they want it done and off their desk as quickly as possible, because everybody in the dealership has a firestorm. This has to be done right now. There is no waiting. And I had a difficult time dealing with that because I'm like, okay, I don't get the time to do what I need to do when I need to do it. And it leads to a lot of friction, specifically with your customers. That's where the friction involves. Again, going back to the analogy, if your customer's like, hey man, where's my quote? Where's my quote? Where's my quote? It's like, you just want to tell them, it's like, I can't do it today. You might have it in October. At the rate that I'm going right now, you might have it in October. And it's frustrating for a CAM. It really was. But for me, the way I looked at things is, when it came to time management, I looked at the number of vehicles that I wanted to sell in any given month. And I figured out, okay, how many people do I have to talk to be able to get to that number? So I was very fortunate. I had about a 40% closing rate. All right. So if I'm going to sell, 500 units a year, I just factored in, okay, how many people do I have to talk to be able to quote? So 40% of the closing rate is only the people that I quoted. So I only quoted about half of the people I talked to. So then you've got twice as many people you talk to. You pare that down to 50% of the people you talk to. You're going to be able to quote about 40% of those people. And then of those 40%, you're going to be able to close those 40% to be able to get to the number. Well, that answered all the questions within the day. It's like, I don't have time to even eat. I don't have time to sleep to be able to get to this number. And then what it does, it starts to eliminate things that are time suckers that we're talking about, scrolling and things of that nature. So I was fortunate enough, and in today's world, it's different than it was pre-COVID, to your point, Casilyn. There's a lot more automation now. There's a lot more softwares that can help us become more automated and be faster and more efficient. But it's that mindset at the dealership level of, hey, we need to be more proactive of what's going on around here. I think we can all agree that support staff isn't hired until it's been needed for years. It's like, oh my God, we've needed this person for 5 years. But how much lost productivity have we experienced over that time frame until we bring in the right person that can help alleviate some of those lids, if you will? So yeah, great points. Yeah. So Ryan, I want to start with you on this one. When it comes to marketing, how much do you feel that an individual, a commercial account manager, needs to spend on marketing themselves rather than allowing the dealership to do all the marketing for them? What are your thoughts on that?